Thank you very much indeed, and welcome to this Innovation Forum webinar live from Stockholm, host city of the United Nations Environment Programme 2022 World Environment Day. I'm Ian Welsh from Innovation Forum, and I'll be your host for the next 90 minutes or so. This is the latest in our series where we talk with people who are at the front line in the battle to halt deforestation. We're partnering once again with Everland, who, as we heard, have just launched their forest plan with the ambition of eliminating deforestation this decade. Our aim now is to try and bring the forest plan to life by featuring insights from representatives from groundbreaking forest conservation REDD+ projects in Kenya, the DRC, Colombia and Cambodia. We'll be discussing community-based conservation projects and their successes and the challenges in tackling deforestation. Panelists will also discuss how REDD+ projects are working to protect threatened wildlife and funding significant economic development activities for local communities. Now, we're very keen to hear from our audience here in Stockholm and online. So do be thinking of your questions and comments as we go. Let me introduce our panelists quickly. I'm delighted to be joined by Joseph Mwakima and Cara Barund from Wildlife Works Casagao Corridor REDD+ project in Kenya. We have Naneth Front, who's with Wildlife Works Mdombe project, REDD+ project in the DRC. We have Leader Sucre, who's the Regional Director for Wildlife Works Latin America. We have Charlie E. from the Tumring REDD+ project in Cambodia. We have Rithani Teng from Wildlife Conservation Society in Cambodia, and Suana Gauntlet, who's the CEO of Wildlife Alliance in Cambodia. Welcome to you all. Joseph, let me turn to you first. Please start by giving us a brief outline of the Casagao Corridor project in Kenya.
Thank you very much. So Wildlife Works is a company that is based in the southern part of Kenya, where we are protecting more than 250,000 hectares of woodland forest, together with landowners and communities within the part of Kenya. And currently, we are implementing a project called the Casco Corridor REDD+ project that has been there from the year 2011 up to date. And it has brought a lot of significant impact, positive impact to the people of, who live close to the protected area that we are working with the landowners and communities. This is a unique place where we have forests, we have wildlife, we have community, we have everything that you can imagine that is beautiful. And it is a precious place that we've all agreed to conserve for this generation and for the coming generation.
Okay, so what was life like before the project began?
Life without the project, when the project not yet started, due to lack of long-term investments within the Casagao Corridor REDD+ project area, there were some of the activities that were happening before the project. And some of them were they destructed the environment, like charcoal burning, where people cleared massive forests for charcoal production, which contributed a lot to deforestation within our project area. The activity that was happening before the project was logging, where companies from different parts of the nation, that is Kenya, came to do commercial logging, which was also affecting our forests and the communities around there. Other activities were like commercial poaching for trophies, for subsistence, bushmeat, and such kind of activities, which they were depleting our forests and our wildlife. So all this contributed a lot to the negative side of where we're living. Then there's this what we call slash and burn agriculture, where generally people clear massive portions of land, that is forest, to do unsustainable agriculture. That is more of cutting down everything that is vegetation, opening up of the soil, which is still unsustainable for agriculture. So these are some of the activities that were happening before the project started.
Okay, we'll come to some of the economic developments and opportunities that have been developed in Casagao Corridor shortly. I'm interested in hearing a little bit about how the community granted their consent for these projects, the whole FPIC process. Can you just talk us through how that worked for your communities?
So FPIC is a process that is called free, prior, and informed consent. It is more of a decision-making process where you involve local communities who will be affected by the project, making sure that you engage with them, talk to them how the project will work, what will change, what are some of the things that they'll be expected to do, what in terms of like if you're a project implementer, what you are expected, different roles. So it is a process that brings everyone together, from local communities to the government to the landowners, and trying to go through the whole concept of what is going to happen. So it is a very vital process, and we've been able to go through it in Casagao Corridor REDD+ project. From phase 1 to phase 2, we've sat down with the communities, different groups, governments, stakeholders, telling them what the project will come to do, what is their role, and how it will impact in their day-to-day lives. So from there, they give you a yes or a no, because it's more of balancing what is important. Do they think it is something that it will create more positive impacts to them, or it is something that will change completely their way of life? So they can gauge after consultation, and from there they give you a yes, and from there you continue with your project. So it's more of a engagement, consultation, bringing people together, sharing ideas. That is what we call FPIC.
Is it that change is the thing that people are most concerned about? Is that the thing that they need to get across to them, that the change is going to be beneficial? Is that what people are mostly concerned about in this process?
Yes, I think most of the people are more concerned with what will change, what are their roles, in terms of the project implementation process. And they would like to see, exactly what are you talking about? What do you want to bring? What will, change on our day-to-day, activities? So it's more of engaging and consulting. Yep.
Okay, tell us a bit about some of the positive impacts that have resulted from the REDD+ project, the Casco Corridor.
The Casagao Corridor REDD+ project has brought a lot of positive impacts to the local communities around the project area. And through the investments that has been done in conjunction with the communities and landowners, we've seen huge impacts, positive impacts in terms of improving education standards to the people around the Casagao Corridor, improved health services, access to better health services, clean and safe water for all. So these are some of the things that have come from the project. But again, the ecological benefits, the social benefits, they are numerous. So it has impacted a lot and created a very, very positive change that we've seen. If you take a picture of last 10 years and now, you can see that difference from the forest, from the schools, the hospitals, clean water. It has changed a lot.
Great. Well, Joseph, thank you very much indeed. I'm sure there's lots we can come back to a little bit later on, but thank you for now. Cara, let me turn to you. It's clear that deforestation occurs when communities don't have alternative sources of income. They need to be able to value the forests as standing forests rather than as felled forests. What are the economic opportunities that have been introduced in Casagao that have given the communities those alternatives?
Yeah, thank you. So the benefits and the economic opportunities that have come from the project are quite broad, diverse, and can be both direct and also indirect. So some of the direct opportunities are things like job creation. So within our project, we now have over 400 jobs that are created through things like our greenhouse projects, through the community engagement staff, our rangers and security staff. And then other direct opportunities come from small-scale sustainable industries that we've set up. So, for example, production of garments and also of soap. And then we also then have increased access to economic opportunities from the work that we do with communities through increased access to market for craft work. So we work with over 1,800, predominantly women, but also men as well, increasing access to their craft work on a global market in conjunction with a local community-based organization. And then there's some of the indirect opportunities that come up from some of the community projects that Joseph mentioned. So such things like the infrastructure and the construction jobs that come up through the project. And then the landowning communities have also been able to access financial tools to invest in their livestock and then increasing the amount of ecotourism opportunities within the project area as well. So like I said, very diverse and yeah, lots of opportunities that have arisen.
You mentioned there 400 direct jobs, 1,800 crafters helped. Do you have any idea of the kind of total number of people that have benefited from the project?
From altogether, it's a huge project area. So we have over 100,000 people that live within the project area. So they will be either directly benefiting or indirectly benefiting from the project. Okay,
so when a buyer purchases a verified emissions reduction from Casagao, how is the money spent and how are decisions made for the community portion of that spending?
So once a verified emission reduction is purchased, then that then gets split. So a third of that income goes directly to the community landowners within the project area. Then Wildlife Works then runs its project operations for the project. So that can be through the community engagement, through the security work, then also through the monitoring and evaluation for the project, for example. And then 50% of the project profit then goes towards the community allocation. So the community allocation gets evenly split between 6 geographically distinct areas within the whole project zone. And then within each of those locations, we have a locally elected community committee, which is called a Locational Carbon Committee. And that is elected every 2 years by the community through a series of meetings called barazas. And those community committees have to have at least 2 women on the committees and also 2 youth representatives. And so those community committees then receive applications from the wider community about the different projects that they want to invest in. So that can be broad from educational infrastructure, health infrastructure, water projects. And those applications then get processed and looked at by the Locational Carbon Committee. And they evaluate the benefit of those projects and the budget, and then those projects are then put back towards the wider community to be ranked in order of their priorities at that time, addressing the different focal issues that they might be facing. And then once those projects have been prioritized, then they get implemented both through a tendering process for construction, or it could be, for example, for bursaries. So they'll just go directly out to the schools.
So it's almost an ongoing process of consent, isn't it? I mean, we talked about the FPIC process at the beginning, but it's an ongoing consent for the projects.
And Joseph and the rest of the team from the community department, it's consistent engagement with the wider community. It's a partnership, yeah.
Great, thank you very much. Just a reminder to those of you who are online, please do use the Q&A function on Zoom to put your questions to our panellists, and I'll be picking them up here got it right here. I'll be picking them up and putting them to our panellists a little bit later on. Cara, thank you very much indeed. Dineth, let me turn to you now. You're with the Wildlife Works Maindombe REDD+ project in the DRC. So perhaps start off by giving us a very brief introduction to that project.
Okay. Thank you, Ian. The Maindombe REDD+ project is located in the territory of Inongo in the Maindombe province. And the project's main activities are in agriculture's intensification. We also have schools, constructions. We have infrastructures too. And we do also have biomass inventory, biodiversity inventory. We have also community involvement, and also the well drilling. Okay. And the project area is occupied by the Batwa and Bolia people in the north. And we have the Basengele in the west, and the Tombenzale in the west, the south, I'm sorry. So the wildlife is dominated by elephants, bonobos, and hippos, but we also have the presence of giant pangolins and various species of birds, monkeys, and antelopes.
Great, no, thank you. I mean, the Congo Basin, of course, is an extremely important forest, the second largest standing forest on the planet. What was life like for people living there in the project area before the project began?
Before the project began in the Maindombe province, we the community had very few schools, and kids were studying under the palm trees. And also, the community did not have enough, they did not have buildings or modern school supplies. The lake was overfished and depleted, and yes, the lake was depleted, and also the food security. The food security was a big issue there, because their sources of food was depended on fishing, hunting, and farming cassava in the edges of the forest, which is one of the drivers of deforestation. Thank you.
Okay, no, thank you very much. So, obviously, big developments there, more schools, better food security for the local people. So lots of exciting developments. But what are, of those developments you mentioned and impacts, which are the ones that have benefited the community the most?
I would say that schools are the most popular investments in the project, because almost all the communities are impacted positively. And this, I will say also that this was the priority determined by the communities themselves. And also the project has built 12 schools and plans to build 50 more in the next few years. This is way more than the project committed to when we began. We committed to 25 schools, and now is 50. We are committed to 50 schools. And also, the project has invested in the water well drilling to provide clean drinking water and to help eliminate the waterborne diseases.
Thank you very much indeed. So the project's now getting significant corporate support. Yes. What does the immediate future of the project look like?
The life of the future for the project and the communities is very bright based on how we are progressing. It's very bright, and the communities they plan to build more schools in other villages, and also they plan to build 3 new hospitals to deliver primary health care to the communities. And also, the project will fund some large-scale developments like cellular service to the forest communities. And also, the project will invest in many more fish ponds, like the one that we have already in production in Lombe. And we will invest also to restock the lake to restore food security.
Great, thank you. So very much like at the project in Kenya, lots of interesting developments and economic developments that are really benefiting the local community. Thanks very much indeed, Naneth. Leader, let me turn to you. You're the Regional Director for Wildlife Works in Latin America. Perhaps give us a brief introduction to what Wildlife Works is up to in Latin America right now.
Sure, Jan. And I first want to thank the Innovation Forum for the opportunity to speak at this event. And so Wildlife Works in Latin America, and especially in Colombia, we have been engaged in 12 projects, and 8 of them are USAID-sponsored projects that were nurtured by USAID already since 2013, 2014. So they're, in a way, pioneering REDD projects in the Colombian Pacific, and they're mostly Afro-Colombian communities. These are rainforest-based Afro-Colombian communities that have been in the rainforest for hundreds of years. They've developed a culture around the rainforest and facing many, many challenges, long-suffering communities on the Colombian Pacific. The REDD projects, we've been accompanying them for many, many years, helping them get through their first verification, sustainable activities, alternative activities, through the technical aspects of REDD and biodiversity monitoring, all of this. And also we are working as partners on 4 of our own REDD projects with partners of local communities, 2 in the Amazon side of Colombia and 2 on the Pacific side of Colombia. And those are new. We're very excited. We're very much gathering speed. And so that's 12 altogether, a lot going on in Colombia.
Okay. So we talked before about the when we were preparing for this, about the Paramos Bosques program. Tell us a bit about that and why its projects are important.
So Paramos y Bosques inherits these projects that were already nurtured by USAID in a previous era, and brings them to fruition, and that's where we came to the fullest into engagement with the projects. Paramos y Bosques is working on the Pacific slope of Colombia. That is the Chocó Darien ecoregion. It's one of the most important hotspots in the planet for biodiversity. Lots of endemic plants, animals, orchids, unique butterflies, unique birds. It's truly like an incredible rainforest, one of the wettest rainforests on Earth. And it's also a very significant cultural landscape. The Afro-Colombian peoples of the Colombian Pacific have a unique culture with many elements that are directly descendant from Africa that they managed to preserve and at the same time adapt them to a very unique and different ecosystem. And the significance is that it has enabled the conservation of both aspects, not just the biodiversity of the area, but also the strength of these communities. The projects have come to fruition. They're selling offsets already for a few years since late 2019, and they're really changing communities for the better. The significance of the project as a pilot that enabled a set of pilot projects that enabled Colombia to foresee what projects would look like, how they could envision Colombia incorporating REDD projects into their national strategy, into the way in which they achieve their climate goals, is difficult to exaggerate what the importance of these projects has been, both for the local communities, but also at the national policy level.
Okay. Let's think a bit more about how it works in practice then. How has the distribution of verified emission reduction credit sales benefited the communities in Colombia?
I'm glad you asked this question, because the other day we were talking, we've had this comment in several different forms from people from the community. And in Colombia in the 1990s, a law was passed called Law 70, and it recognized formally and legally to the collective territories, to the Afro-Colombian peoples in the rainforest. And the law gave, the people tell us, the law gave us the land, they gave us the self-governance capability, but they didn't give us resources. We had no resources to implement the authority that we have, the capacity to self-determine what we wanted to do, how we wanted to live in our homeland. And that's what REDD is enabling. That's what the carbon offsets are enabling. These people, for the first time, are having sufficient resources to make collective decisions and be protagonists of their own collective destiny in a way that was not possible before. That enables them to make decisions that save the rainforest, that protect it, that manage it in a way that is sustainable in the long term, and where they can begin to provide solutions to the many people that live in each of these territories. So it's truly been a tool, an instrument to make their own will happen.
That is the key, isn't it? It's allowing communities to have finance to do what it is they want to do.
Yeah, and I mean, I want to talk a little bit to the specifics of this. What this means is these communities are well organized in terms of being advocates for themselves. They have long been able to lobby in front of the government, to they have a good level of political organization, but they haven't had to or they haven't had the resources to implement some of the changes they would like to see on their own. Now communities are going through a yearly plan. They have an assembly for each territory. They have an assembly yearly. They put together a yearly plan, and then they begin to invest the carbon resources in things like, first of all, governance. Some of these communities need to have a stronger government structure, and they recognize that, and they invest in their own governance. They get training. They invest in things like accounting, for instance, like basic things that you need for good governance. They invest in infrastructure, docks, the capacity to keep access canals free so that they can go. Most of these communities are accessed by river. They invest in basic infrastructure that they need to get some of their products to market at a higher value added. So acai, which is this fruit that many people might have in a milkshake or here, like a superfood, is produced in the Pacific. It's called Naidi, but you have to bring it to market very fresh. If you don't have the right infrastructure, you can't send it to market quickly. You can't capture that value. Basic things like plantains, sugarcane, cocoa, cacao. The project has enabled them to improve the techniques, improve the marketing of those things, involve women's cooperatives in some of this production in many of the different territories. And it has just made a tremendous difference in terms of the value that they can capture, the yield that they get from the already deforested areas, and the capacity to let go of other activities. The Colombian Pacific has 17% of Colombia's rainforests, but produces 54% of the timber that is commercially sold from the forests of Colombia. So you can imagine the intensity of production, but it's actually been a very marginal livelihood for the guys, and they're typically guys, that cut the trees. So the projects have now given many of these guys alternative jobs. In fact, some of these jobs are in overseeing the forest itself, in measuring carbon stocks in the forest and doing monitoring. So the projects generate a significant amount of alternative jobs directly and a whole lot of impacts indirectly. Communities are choosing time and time again to give scholarships to the kids, to improve schooling locally, but also to send the kids out to the cities. And they're looking with, in the long term, they want to have more people with more capacity to make more things happen for their communities. And education, healthcare are some of the big things that they invest in as well.
You're very telling, your points you made around the alternatives to logging. That's what this is all about, is giving people opportunities and to value their forests by not destroying them.
Exactly.
Okay, let's talk a bit about government. How has the Colombian government supported REDD+?
Well, I think that the Colombian government, back in 2017, when they implemented the carbon tax, they created a domestic tax. And already then, they actually recognized VERA and other voluntary market standards as complying with Colombian regulations. So you could meet your carbon tax obligation either by paying the tax or by using these voluntary market credits for compliance within Colombia. So that in and of itself created a space where you have, it's not a very high price, but it is a price, and it provided a floor to develop these voluntary market credits in Colombia. Now, many of these projects in Colombia are considered quite attractive, and the international market is buying these offsets. And it is the fact that the Colombian legal infrastructure recognizes, acknowledges projects, they're part of the nested jurisdictional REDD strategies and so on of the country, as per Resolution 1447, gives the projects a very high level of legitimacy. It gives them a legal regulatory certainty, if you will, a significant level of regulatory certainty, which is very helpful. And also, more and more, the Colombian government is realizing how helpful the voluntary support of companies from around the world is helping them achieve more reductions. It's helping the country achieve a greater lowering of deforestation, and thereby getting closer to attaining the goals that they have set for themselves in front of the United Nations. This in a place where there are some headwinds, there are some pressures that would increase the rate of deforestation, but the voluntary market is one of the forces that is fighting in the right direction, helping us lower it.
Certainly a very interesting approach that the Colombian government are taking, one that could perhaps be replicated elsewhere. Leader, thanks very much indeed for now. audience, please, here and online, do be thinking of your questions. I have 2 already from our online audience. Thank you very much for those. Do keep them coming. But I'll be wanting questions from our audience here as well. So do be thinking about your comments and questions as we go. Charlie, welcome. You're from the Tumring REDD Plus project in Cambodia. Start by giving us a brief introduction to the project, please.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. The Tumring REDD Plus project is a project that is a kind of collaboration between the Cambodian government with the Korean government. And it covers an area of more than 67,000 hectares. And if we talk about the forest area, it has about 42,000 hectares. And actually, this project, the location is chosen because of this area has a high rate of deforestation. We studied about the deforestation rate between 2010 and 2014. It was more than 3% of deforestation. And if compared to the annual deforestation rate, it was only just more than 2%. So it is higher than the national one. So that's why the government of Cambodia, especially the Forestry Administration, with the Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries, decided to initiate the REDD Plus project there. And we got support, especially financial support from the Korea Forest Service, the Republic of Korea. So we joined together and we started the project at the end of 2014. And the project area covers with the size of a very big forest, and it has like kind of evergreens, semi-evergreen, and also the deciduous forest. Lots of wildlife species there, and also the local community. In general, like more than 250,000 people have been benefiting from that project as well.
Okay, thanks very much indeed. So the projects have been developed in cooperation with the South Korean government. How then has the project gone about implementing conservation work on the ground and, crucially, as we've heard so far, engaging the local people?
Yes. Actually, the project is a collaboration between the Cambodian government with the Korean government. And Korean government is one of the development partners, and it helps Cambodia with lots of sectors, including forestry. So actually, since 2008, the Cambodian government started the REDD Plus project, the National REDD Plus project, and they assess every part of the country. And it came to the Kampong Thom province, which is the Tumring REDD Plus project area. And we got that idea, and we just want to start a project, the REDD Plus project there. And so the Korean government also came along and discussed that together. And later, we agreed together, and we signed an MOU together. And later, we started the project in 2015. And along with that, we also had lots of meetings with the community. We got a FPIC, like we discussed before. We got a process of agreement. We have lots of meetings, workshops, to make sure that the community and the local authority understood about the REDD Plus project. What is it about? And so later they agreed, they understood about that, and they agreed, and we got the consent from them, and we started the project.
Okay. Tell me a bit about what would be happening if the REDD Plus project wasn't there.
The REDD Plus project plays a very important role there, especially in reducing the rate of deforestation. Before the project started, like small land conversion for agriculture happened a lot and very big scale, and lots of areas of cleared area. And like the people cleared it, and then they plant cashew, cassava, also rubber as well. So because that's a kind of evergreen forest and rainforest, that's the fertility of the soil is really, really good, and they can got lots of production of cashew, rubber, and cassava as well. So it happens everywhere across the project sites. So that's the biggest challenge for us as well. And also the forest, like the logging, illegal logging, it happens across the project area as well. Like the people logged it and sell it with a high price of, they get lots of money. by logging and just get the trees out. And also the fuel wood collection as well. It happened across the project area. Lots of charcoal kilns, and also the people in Cambodia use lots of logs to burn for cooking, and also for charcoal for restaurant as well. So that happened a lot before the project started. And lastly, also forest fire, especially in the deciduous forest, while the people clear and cut and for agricultural purpose, and also they cook for the food while they are traveling, while they are searching for animals, for wildlife. So they set the fire, and then the fire burn so huge areas of forest as well.
Thank you. So, I mean, you've been quite clear that there are challenges then in this project, and they've been widely known, but you're addressing them, and that's great to see. So, how do you go about meeting these challenges? You mean you listed the fuel wood collection, the illegal logging, forest fires, the creation of plantations. What are the keys to addressing these challenges?
Thank you. After receiving, we knowing about this drivers of deforestation, these challenges, together with the Cambodian government and Korean government, like the representative from the Korean Forest Service, we discussed that together, and the project management unit, the project team, came about with strategic objectives in order to address the drivers. So the first one is about land tenure security, which is very important. We help the community, especially the community forests, to register so they can have their own land title, and it protects the land for the whole community from being chopped off or from being cleared. So it is really, really important. It's a big success for us as well. So we got the land title, and we are going to go for another 13. So we have 14 community forests across the project area. So we got one as a lesson learned, as a pilot. So we are going to go for another 13, and we are sure that we will get that as well. So that's the first one. The second one is about law enforcement. So law enforcement is very important. We work with the local forestry officers, and together with soldiers and also military police, that we get engaged together, and we work together with a village, with the chief, commune chiefs, so that we patrol across the project areas, and we got support from the project, and we support them, and they patrol across the project areas as well. And additional, we also worked with we call the Community Forest Management Committee. They have the representatives. They work together. They work as a group to patrol across their community forest as well. And the third one is about livelihood development programs. We work with our subcontractors, for example, like the provincial department, so that we give them modern agricultural techniques and transfers, like new knowledge to the communities, so that they can get a sustainable agricultural practice. And also we form the agriculture cooperative as well, where the community they have their own team as well, so that they can collect all the products like cassava, like cashew, from the members, and collect to that cooperative, and they can get a higher price that the project supported that activity as well. And in addition to that, we also have a kind of support like resin. So we have resin tree, thousands and thousands of resin trees across the project area. So the resin are very important for them to get the benefit. We call it the non-timber forest products. So it is not timber, it's the kind of resin that get out of the timber. So the people can collect that, and they can sell it with higher price as well. So we also support that, and we also form an enterprise for them, so that they can go along all year round to collect and get the income. Another one is another objective is also we have the participation program. We try to have the workshop, we try to have meetings in order to disseminate about forestry law, so that the people there, they understand about the consequences of offending, the forest, like they clear the forest, they chop the forest, and they get the timber. So we try to disseminate, try to help them understand about forestry law as well, and also in general knowledge, understanding about climate change, about the importance of forests as well. And also we also work with the local government and sub-national government as well about the immigrants to the project area, because the project area has a big forest area, soil fertility, like I told you. So the people just come in from other provinces, from other districts, so they come along and they just cut and clear. And so the project just work with the village chief, the commune chief, and also district governor to make sure that they can control that, and they will educate those new comers to make sure that they will not clear it, and if they clear it, they will get like file a complaint to the court or something like that. And the last one is about project monitoring, effective project monitoring. So we work with our partners. We also have subcontractors as well. So we did a survey about the wildlife presence across the project area, and we found that it has been increasing. And we also put camera traps there. We saw lots of rare species, endangered species, big mammals, small mammals, birds. So that's quite a success, quite a happy thing that we've done, and we support to this project as well.
Great. No, thank you very much indeed. Very comprehensive run through the project here, but no, thank you very much indeed. Brittany, let me turn to you now. Welcome to you. You're National Strategic Manager with Wildlife Conservation Society in Cambodia, and you also involved in the Kiosima REDD+ project. Perhaps start, as our previous panels, just give us a little bit of an introduction to the Kiosima REDD+ project.
Thank you, and hi everyone. Kiosima Wildlife Sanctuary is located in the eastern plain of Cambodia. It was quite remote, and it is covering around nearly 3,000 hectares. It's a mix of the hilly green forest, semi-evergreen forest, and a wetland, as well as the grassland. And the Kiosima Wildlife Sanctuary, through the survey, revealed that this biodiversity richness, and it covers 80% of the global critical endangered black sand-duck and endangered species of the yellow gibbon. And also the Kiosima is a home to indigenous Bunong communities, and who depend their livelihood on the forest and the natural resources. And these areas is face some of the challenges as a frontier of the deforestation. And before the project is starting, this project is the we call the logging concession, and through the government of Cambodia see this important place and important for biodiversity, and as well as the important for community livelihood. So the government have established this area as the conservation or protected area in around 2002, and under the Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry and Fishery. And for WCS, we have support this project since early around 2018 to 2008, and but with limited budget, and we see this kind of the important side. So the REDD+ project is starting in 2010 for the improving the management of the Kiosima. And we see that through our implementation, we got some of the success through the project, like we provide some of the rights to the provide land tenure right to the local community as the community land title, and also establish the community protected area, so the community can have the right to the resource and improving their livelihood.
Okay, I was going to ask you then, just perhaps give us a little bit more detail as to how the project has specifically helped Indigenous people secure their land rights. What's the process been, and how has the project helped specifically?
The project is help the community access to the land right since the beginning of the project. So we consider the land right is important for the local community. So the project is starting to have the community to legal registration of the communal land title. So the community have the right to natural resource as the because the communal land title have like 5 category of land. So they have the reserve land, spiritual forest, and the agriculture for agriculture. So we have to support the legal registration. It's kind of secure their land, right? And as well as the we establish the community protected area. So the community have the rights to the resource and also their livelihood.
Great, well, thank you. Change then. What have been the most significant changes that you've seen for these communities? Is it the right to the access of the land tenure plan? Is that the most significant change you've seen, or are there other things as well?
Yeah, there are some of the changes we can see in 2 things. So the first thing is like regarding to the communities. So first, yes, the access to the access to land right is we can see the change. So the community have to secure their land rights, and secondly, the community have the a kind of self-identifies the community development to have to access to clean water, education, and the health. So, and the thirdly, the change perspective of the community for value of the forest, to keep the forest standing. So they see that to keep the forest standing, they can get the income benefit from the carbon cell, income from the carbon cell. So because the cell of the carbon cell in the Casima is give directly to the community. So they change perspective that to keep the forest standing, so they can have the money for the improving their livelihood as well as the community development. And secondly, regarding the biodiversity, so we can see that compared to baseline scenario, we expect that is most of the biodiversity will be lost. However, during the project support, we can see that the biodiversity, especially the indicator species like black sand duck and the gibbon as the endangered species remain stable, and some of the species like green peafowl is increased. So as the Saima is a whole of world population individual remaining in the Kao Saima.
Great. Well, thank you very much indeed. Lots of really interesting stuff there. Do keep the questions coming, online audience. Keep them short, easier for me to interpret them and put them to our panel. And do in the room, everyone be thinking about your questions. We'll be coming to them very shortly. Just a reminder, we're running through till 3 p.m. Central European time. So still got 40 minutes or so to go. Suana, let me turn to you. Thank you for your patience. And our final, last but definitely not least, of our panelists. You're CEO of Wildlife Alliance in Cambodia. I wondered if you might want to think about things a bit more generally in terms of drivers of deforestation. We've heard quite a few of them already from our panel. Are there any other deforestation drivers in Cambodia or elsewhere that you think we need to be talking about as well?
Thank you very much, Ian. I think one of the greatest, the fastest growing threat, including in South America, DRC, so the Congo Belt and Southeast Asia, is the drive to acquire land for land speculation and to sell it illegally. So most of these forests are state land, especially in Cambodia. It's all state land, and everyone is hurrying to cut as much forest by bulldozer, by chainsaw, hiring anybody they can so they can sell it under the table. And with the agreement, the tacit agreement of local authorities, commune leaders, district leaders, often province leaders, which is state for the U.S., even if with a little signature on the sales contract, even if it's in the corner. And that is the biggest driver of deforestation that we have seen, versus in the beginning was, as my colleagues have mentioned, charcoal production, increase the farm holders' agriculture land, commercial poaching. A lot of that has diminished and is now on the front line as an economic development driver for large corporations and businessmen.
Okay. What about more general extents of deforestation? What are you seeing? I know you've done some research into this. Where are the key, across the tropics, the key areas where there are new areas of deforestation that perhaps we've not been aware of? And what are the kind of dangers there, do you think?
The new areas of deforestation?
Yeah. Or the areas not necessarily new, the kind of areas of key deforestation.
Sorry, can you repeat your question?
Sorry. Rather than what I'm interested in is the kind of extent of deforestation that perhaps we're not aware of. I know this is something you've been talking about.
Yes.
So where are these areas, and what are the kind of things that are a little bit, that we're not hearing about correctly?
Right. I think one of the facts that is not well known is that we have unfortunately destroyed 50% of the tropical forest already. Wildlife Alliance has done hundreds of hours of GIS analysis, and we've come up with this really staggering fact: half of our global watersheds are destroyed. And because of this, the temperature, we're talking about global warming in general, and we know it's in principle caused by CO2 emissions, but a fact that's not as well known is that when you cut, let's say, a hectare of tropical forest, the temperature on the ground rises 6 degrees centigrade immediately. And if you clear a larger area, it won't rain there for at least 9 months. So it has a direct impact on rainfall. NASA has done an amazing job in demonstrating the extent of climate change due to tropical deforestation in Brazil, in the Congo Basin, in Southeast Asia, which influences the rainfall in the Northern Hemisphere. Everybody knows nowadays through the news that the air around the planet is drier and is causing wildfires everywhere. The issue is that because the tropical forests were our great watershed before, they used to emit humidity and cool air traveling around the planet. And now, instead of humidity and cool air, it's dry air. So you can see how it creates havoc in our global rainfall and our global climate. So the most urgent thing is to do more REDD projects that can stabilize, help stabilize what is left. We're all this, yeah. I think we, as REDD project implementers, we are very aware of this, and we're working as fast as we can to reduce deforestation in our projects. As panelists here, we represent the highest impact REDD projects in the world. So we are all very grateful to our corporate sponsors, our corporate partners, who have been buying the carbon offsets of our projects. Without you, we simply could not stop deforestation. The projects could not afford the cost of ranger protection. These are the guys in the field who stop the bulldozers and stop the chainsaws. We could not afford the cost of livelihoods. We could not be building sustainable factories to give jobs to entire villages. We could not be building modern agriculture systems that provide income to the poorest slash and burn families who now have transferred to sustainable agriculture, and so on. And a very important element is also education. My colleagues mentioned education, school building. What we're doing also in the Southern Cardamoms is providing university scholarships to very poor students who otherwise would never have access to higher education. So thank you to all of our corporate sponsors, and we need more of you to help combat deforestation quickly before 2030.
So Anna, you mentioned there the corporates that are now beginning to buy verified emission reduction credits to help keep the forest standing. What's your sense about the way that business is now thinking in terms of buying carbon credits like that? What are you seeing? What's your sense in terms of the acceptance of business around the beneficial role of the voluntary carbon markets?
Well, one of the things that I have observed is that in the north, let's say in Sweden, Germany, France, of course the UK, there's a much larger awareness, and companies are coming on board very fast. In Southeast Asia, it's not the case. The driver is still profit. Let's make profit as fast as we can. One of the roles that Wildlife Alliance fulfills in our partnership with the government is to try to fight this drive for more profit. We do a lot of negotiations and a lot of diplomatic outreach with corporations, the highest corporations in the country, who always give excuses that the forest that they are clearing is only a small piece and it's already degraded, so it won't make a difference. So they're putting huge special economic zones there, which of course make a huge difference. Plus, can you think, if these businessmen are doing that in Cambodia, more businessmen are doing that in Brazil, others are doing this in the Congo Basin. So it's 1 million hectares of, it's the size of, I think it's 100,000 football fields a day are being cleared of tropical forest. It's huge. So yes, answer your question, yes, in the northern countries. And having said all that, the Cambodian government is also much more committed than it used to be. It's one of the leading countries that has fulfilled all of its UNFCCC obligations, starting with the REDD roadmap, following with the forest deforestation levels, and so on. And Cambodia is the one and only country in Asia selling carbon, selling VERs. So we want that country to continue its commitment, which is strongly supported by the Prime Minister, by the way.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, I'd like to turn to some questions. We have a question straight here, straight away from our audience. We have a microphone, I hope, please. We're in the front, right. Down the front. There we go. Thank you very much. So, sir, give us your name and who you represent, please. And yes, it is on. And keep the question short, please.
Very well. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Beto Borges with the Community Initiative Forest Trends. Really pleased to be here. Great presentations. I have a question, perhaps to you, leader, if others want to speak on it as well. We hear a lot about the integrity of offsets, social, environmental integrity of offsets. So, leader, could you compare and contrast what is really the best for local communities, indigenous people's local communities, in relation to the mandated Cancun safeguards FPIC, any particularly carbon ownership rights. So where do they fare better? In programs that are led by governments, such as jurisdictional REDD, or carbon-based projects as well?
Thank you. Very good question.
Yeah, it's a very pointed question. So, you know what? When we work in the voluntary market, the standards that we work with, such as VERAS and the VCS and this climate, community, and biodiversity standard, really mandate very strong free, prior, and informed consent. And moreover, they not only as Joseph showed, not only is it a process that happens at the beginning of the project, but also continues to happen as resources arrive from sales of carbon offsets, and communities have to decide what to do with these resources, and mechanisms are created to involve the women, to involve young people, to involve people like the elderly that are sometimes excluded from other traditional structures because it has to be inclusive. That works really well at the project level. In Latin America, or many parts of Latin America, what we have are indigenous peoples, Afro-Colombian peoples, other community or communal organizations that have a level of self-government, but they're still too granular to at some level to expect the government, especially from large countries like Colombia, Peru, Brazil, to be able to engage effectively and efficiently at that depth of consent, at that depth of engagement. When you talk about the Cancun safeguards, you want free, prior, and informed consent to be real. You want the community, not just the head of the community, you want the whole community to know about the project, to know what they're getting into, to understand the benefits and the commitments. They're making commitments to save their forest. Do you really want to save your forest? We don't want to partner with you if you don't want to save the forest. It has to be in your heart. It has to be in who you are that the forest is protected, because otherwise you're not going to be a good REDD Plus partner. This is not a project for 3 years. It's a project for 30 years and then some. It's generations. And so that consent, that free, prior, and informed consent is so fundamental. And what we find with, at least in our region, is that the communities have long wanted to protect their forests better, and they have made painful trade-offs where they get short-term economic gain by giving up some of this long-term conservation of the forest. And now the carbon financing comes in and gives them the alternative that enables them to make that vision, to make that cultural imperative to protect their homeland forest a reality. But to say yes to that, the question has to be posed to the community at large. And to this day, we have not found a jurisdictional scale project, or at least I haven't found it, that has been able to go that deep to get that consent. To the point where you go to the ground and you ask people in the villages and you ask people in the hamlets, like, did you hear about this jurisdictional project? Were you asked about it? Did you have a chance to put your opinion forward? And the answer tends to be no. Whereas with the project, because it's a more granular, more zooming in into a specific area, then the commitment is real from the beginning. And I think that's part of the reason why the projects work, because we engage at the ground level, not at the bureaucratic level or at the policy level, which is really important and jurisdictional. We do believe in jurisdictional nested REDD, where the REDD projects are part of the toolkit that makes a jurisdictional project work. We're committed to this. We believe it works. We have shown that it works. Yet, if I may say so myself, it is the existence of projects that work within the jurisdiction that enable the rest of the jurisdiction, which might not be part of a project, to look and say, oh, that's what this is about. The projects make the action that needed real, because it shows the action on the ground. And if anything, it enables a jurisdictional project to be more about informed consent at large, because there are illustrations, examples, vivid ways in which you can see what the jurisdictional project is aiming to do. That's a long answer, Beto, but at a fundamental level, I am convinced, both because of the capacity to reach much more deeply in the ground but also because of the sort of much bigger focus that the systems put in us, like, you know, the community climate and biodiversity system to get verified year after year after year. They come and they audit us and they check that these safeguards are being met, that communities are really benefiting, and that they are protagonists of this decision making.
Okay, thank you, Leader. A comprehensive answer, as you said. Let me turn to a question online. And the question here, and it's really important, is asking how to inspire and involve young people in the projects. When you bring together, bring in the finance, how do you engage young people in these projects? Joseph, do you want to kick off? Briefly, if you would, how do you engage specifically young people? And does that encourage them to remain in the communities?
Yeah, I think it's important, number one, to engage young people, because they're the majority mostly in the places that we come from. And the best way to do it is to see what they love and, you know, marry into it. Like in our place, people love football. Football is everything. So through sports, we can easily engage young people through football matches, you know, where we can talk in between the matches, after the matches. We can consult each other. So different avenues through theater, art. You know, it's very hard to sit with young people, maybe in Africa, I'll say in Kenya, and have a lecture of 2 hours talking about REDD+. But when you engage with them in art and sports and social media, then it becomes so easy and they get involved.
Yes, and thanks for bringing up football. As Scotland were knocked out of the World Cup last night, I was hoping that football wouldn't come up today. But it's true. I mean, obviously, kids are going to be more engaged in football than they are going to be in REDD+. Would anyone else like to come in on that, about the importance of engaging young people in the communities? No? Okay, well, let's move on then. Let's go back to the room. We have a question over here. And as I said, brief question, please.
I'll do my best. Josh Tostison from Everland. Hello. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to ask a hard question. So the carbon markets are doing very well. And what's now beginning to come is a level of resource that we have all who've been working in this field for a long time, we've been dreaming of this day. And now this day has come where an unprecedented level of financial resources are coming to the ground. And this is creating what I'll call a high-class problem. It's a good problem to have, to challenge, which is how are we going to work effectively on the ground with communities to handle this new level of resource that's coming? Are there special challenges that you see with success?
Good question, Josh. Thank you very much indeed. Who'd like to have a go at that one? Cara, do you want to talk about that? Because it's success on the ground, the kind of challenge now, because here, you know, we've been talking about this for some time. Now we've got to get on with it.
Yeah, I mean, what's great is the framework is already there, and it's been there, especially with our project, for a long time. We've been on the ground working for 11 years now. And so the framework's already there, so increased investment just means more opportunities for a larger community number. So it's a case of we're there ready to work. So yeah, please continue. And yeah, and that's for that's for communities, but also for wildlife. And then we've also then potentially got the opportunity to expand that to other areas that need it as well.
Thank you. Charlie, do you want to comment on that? When the kind of, here we are, this is the time, let's get on with it?
Yes, actually the fund that we got from the carbon credit sales are very important, and the involvement of the community in deciding that where it should go is also crucial. And we used to get a consent from the community as well, and they agreed with us. And so we have a meeting with them, and we just ask them, what do you want from the project? And when we got the fund, and then just list out, and they have a group together, have separate groups, and then they discuss what they want, and then they write it down. And by receiving that, we also plan, like we have a work plan for annual or 2 year or 3 years together. So by using the fund from the project, and later we found that it works very well, and the problem almost disappeared, like, because the activities that we did, we got from them. So it's the best way that we use the resource that we got from the credits, and it works very well at the ground level.
Great, thank you. Let me turn to another question. Do we have any more questions from the room? We'll turn to another question online. Quite a specific question, this. All the projects we've talked about have boundaries, and the question asks about the need for boundary enforcement to protect against the agents of deforestation. We've talked about the poaching, the illegal logging, and everything else. And how do you balance that against the underlying social drivers that fuel these illegal activities? So how do you deal with the kind of boundary issue? Suanna?
Sure, I'll be happy to take that question. Dealing with the boundary issue, we have actually quite a lot of experience in this, Wildlife Alliance, working with the government since we started the project in 2001, because when we arrived, there were about 37 to 40 forest fires every single day for land encroachment, for grabbing land and selling it to the soldiers or the Chinese illegally. We had 38 elephants killed, 28 tigers slaughtered, and it was all due to the lack of boundaries. So we worked closely with government at all levels, with all the communities, and it took us 2 years. But what we did, we started with the main freeway going through the project, but it was an access, it was a major access into the forest, and we achieved zoning of that boundary over 140 kilometers. Every village, because it's hard to do the red boundary itself. The big issue is the community. You have to zone and demarcate with visible posts the communities themselves, and then they have enough land and private land to develop their either ecotourism or agriculture or hotels. And then outside of that boundary, it is strictly protected forest. So we've been very successful in curbing the appetite of the commune chiefs for selling land illegally in the forest through these agreements. So they have to sign on these maps. It's signed at all levels: community, commune chief, district governor, and provincial governor. And that way, when someone claims a piece of illegal forest for their land and the commune chief signs on it, you can take the commune chief to prison. But you don't take him to prison, of course. You go to him and you negotiate and you say, what would you prefer? Would you prefer going to prison, or would you prefer to revoke this signature of yours and tell this person that it's not their land? So it worked every time. It worked every time. And then you become great friends.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I want to go to another question online. A lot of questions have been asking about some of the specifics around projects, but a particular question asks, how do you balance using the revenues to generate direct local employment, so employment, paying people with new jobs, versus funding more community broad initiatives that will perhaps generate benefits for the community more generally? So specific benefits for individuals versus benefits for community. How do you get that balance? Leader, do you want to have a quick go at that one?
Well, I think that the best judge of that, if the governance mechanism is truly inclusive, it'll come at a good balance on that. It'll come at a good balance of things that benefit the community at large and specific opportunities to create alternative livelihoods for more specific people. But also, bear in mind that a project is an ongoing activity. It's not something that you set up once and you have staff. You have to create a project team. You have to have people that monitor biodiversity. You have to have people that do, in many communities, choose to have, in Colombia, for example, they choose to set up forest monitors or forest rangers, however you want to call them. And these are not optional. You know, the community sees the need to create these jobs. Often, the forest rangers are the bad guys that we were talking about before, because those are the guys that know how to be in the forest. The loggers, the illegal hunters, those are the guys that love being in the forest. They are the best. One of the best ways to take care of them actually is to to repurpose them, if you will, into forest rangers. But so see the balance here. Like in many cases, you try to offer the most direct jobs to the people that would otherwise have done the most harm because they depend much more in exploiting the forest. And then the indirect benefits go to perhaps people that are more in larger villages and so on, but they're still in the project area. And in our experience in Colombia, what we've seen is that the local governance structure, if it is inclusive, and inclusivity is key, will have that sense. They will have the sense of how to achieve that balance. So it gets a little bit back to the question of Beto put in place, which is you have to help make the community more of the protagonist of the decision making.
Sure, thank you. Joseph, do you want to have a go at that as well? I mean, you mentioned the number of jobs that have been developed in Kenya, the Casagao Corridor, project. How do you get that balance? How do you decide between specifically employing new people versus the community benefits for everybody?
I think, as leaders say, it comes. I think. I'll say it's not automatic, but at least it's a way of you try to balance and make sure that those that 100% depend on the forest and needs are catered, but also you zoom in to the other people who depend on the forest directly or indirectly. In our case, most of the jobs that we've been able to provide, for the forest rangers, a big part of them they were poachers converted to rangers. Some were charcoal burners converted to rangers. So you see, it comes automatically in a way. But again, you have to make sure that you are able to, provide sustainable kind of activities and investment for all. Yep.
Okay. Yep. Thank you. Any questions from in the audience here? No? Certainly, online audience, you're winning in terms of the question asking. Okay. Quick question, and obviously we're talking about projects that have a finite life, and a couple of people have asked what happens at the end of the project. What's the end, and what happens thereafter? Cara, do you want to have a go at that one?
Yeah, so through the project financing, we're investing in multiple different avenues of sustainable income opportunities for communities. So the aim is on a community level, on a landowner community level, by the end of the project lifetime, there are enough sustainable industries working within the project area that once the carbon financing comes to a close, that there are other income streams that are therefore available for everyone. So that's the main aim.
Okay. Anyone else want to further comment from the panel? No? Okay.
Oh, sorry, I'd like to make a comment.
Sure, of course.
Yeah. So our government in Cambodia has committed to renewing the contract at the end of the project period. They understand that this is, we're not going to say in perpetuity, because for those who want to develop economic projects, they are still hoping that the red forest will be fragmented and something will be given to the economy. But the government knows better, and they do shorter periods of contracts, but once the contract is finished, they renew.
Great. Thank you very much indeed. Another question from online, and it's about some of the things we talked about earlier, the kind of security point of view. How do you ensure, when you're thinking about developing security for the projects, what are the key points in terms of respecting human rights locally, and what sort of agreements have to be put in place to kind of ensure that those are respected? Obviously, a key issue when you're thinking about training security guards. Leader, quick thought on that? What are the key points you'd be thinking about?
I would say that, I think that this is a question that perhaps others can add more into. In Colombia in particular, this is a very highly developed area of legal clarity, if you will, and communities are very sensitive to human rights because of, unfortunately, this is true also because Colombia is known for its decades of violence and insecure conditions. It's in areas like the ones that we work in. Nobody is as sensitive to this as the communities themselves, because they have been the victims in Colombia for the longest time. they understand the value of human rights. Their human rights have been trampled for the longest time, and they have had some means, and I have to give credit to the Colombian government and to the many organizations, including international organizations that have been working in Colombia, but they have for the longest time had to fight to have their human rights respected. So when they go in turn and are part of putting together the project, are part for putting together the forest ranger team, they understand keenly that human rights need to be respected. So it is perhaps part of how the projects become kind of islands of hope in this ocean of problems sometimes in where we are. Because by having the communities be so much on the driver's seat too, it enables them to make that reality happen.
Charlie, do you want to come in on that? I mean, I know these are issues that you have been dealing with in Cambodia.
Yes, actually, we respect the community members in different ways. But for example, in the REDD Plus project, for example, for the patrolling activity, we also got agreement from the community members. For example, like we have a specific place to patrol for a month, so we got an agreement and we asked them to read about that very carefully and then later decide, and they agreed that and decide. That's the way that we respect them as well. And also, for example, for the customary right or the traditional rights, like in REDD Plus project, for example, in the Marine REDD Plus project, we have 14 community community forests. So they have their own management plan. They have their own management committee, and they got elected like that, and kind of election for their community committee. And also about their management plan, so they have right to cut some tree for example, for building new house for new couples. So that's the way that we respect them and we allow them to do that as well, but with a good way, with a great monitoring from the officers as well. So that's another example of respecting them.
Cara, did you want to come in?
Yeah, just on the kind of the human rights side, every project is different. But for example, in the Casagao project, our rangers and the security team are all members of the community at large as well. So that really helps when it comes to relations with the wider community and addressing any issues that might come up, which with our team, they're very carefully trained on human rights violation possibilities, and we work to really make sure that doesn't happen. And we also have we're very sensitive to any grievances that might happen within the community. So we have grievance mechanisms in place to make sure that anything that the community has to say is listened to and heard.
Okay, we're coming towards the end. One very quick question, which I think will be welcome to our panel. Obviously, you've been engaging our audience online because I've got a question. Several people have actually asked this. How do companies invest in carbon offsetting for these projects? So people want to invest in your project. So how do they go about doing that? What's the best thing to do? Leader, why don't you just give us a quick, what do they do? If people listening in want to invest, what do they do?
Well, the first thing is to look at offsets and buy them. The offsets might seem like a one-off mechanism, but in fact, it's what keeps the wheel rolling. And conservation is long-term, community development, community progress is long-term, and both of those things need a steady or an ongoing income stream. So as long as you keep offsetting your own footprint and doing your part to have a net zero footprint in your life or in your corporate life, you're also doing your part to keep projects going and to keep the benefits flowing. So it's the best that you can do in most cases.
Okay, coming towards the end, I want to just. Sorry, we are coming to the end, I'm afraid, and we can continue the debate in the room after our online audience leaves us. But I want to come to our panel now and just ask them one thing to give us key thing they've taken away from the last 90 minutes of discussion. What's the one thing that they want our audience to remember and think about from the last 90 minutes or so? I'll come down the panel. Suana, you go first.
Maybe I'm repeating myself, but I would say that the most important part is if you're working in a corporation or even a firm, a smaller firm, is to buy the VERs from our REDD projects so that the work on the ground can continue and can afford to do the forest protection. It's the most direct way to help to stop deforestation on the ground. That would be my point.
Thank you. Brittany.
Yeah, I think great to buy the carbon credit in order to have the sustainable management of the area, and also provides the income to the community and improve the livelihood of the local communities.
Thank you. Charlie?
Well, thank you for having me here and to have my voice heard. And thank you so much. And the REDD Plus project is very important to help the community members to protect their rights, like what we said, and also helps contribute to the sustainable development goals. Like they get lots of benefits from the timber, building the houses, building the things that they wanted, and also non-timber forest products. So lots of benefits for the community and also the whole world as well.
Peter.
I'm going to repeat myself a little bit as well. I'm building on Suana's comment. You buy the carbon offsets to offset your footprint of the last year. But when you're buying a carbon offset, you're keeping a project going that has a 30-year lifespan and the possibility of continuing beyond 30 years. Because we want to save forests for eternity. We want to save them for the long term. And you know what? Those same resources are what are needed to help communities improve themselves and create a new reality and reach their future dreams. They don't need help for 3 years. They need help for generations. Only a project of that long-term view can help communities truly achieve their potential, truly get to that level where they want to be. And that's the beauty of a REDD project, because it has that long outlook. And each time, each year that you offset your footprint with our projects, you're helping that community reach those dreams.
Thank you, leader. Ineth, briefly?
Yes, I would say thank you, first of all, to Evelyn for having us here. And I'm happy to represent the Maindombe REDD Plus project. Thank you to those who believe in REDD Plus project. Everything you are doing is making a change in the community's lives. The collaboration of REDD Plus supporting and approaching, the community and working together, and the community protecting our forests and to conserve our environment is for the good of everyone. And you don't know how much these communities are willing or want to work together to make the change that we all need.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Cara?
Yeah, just thank you again for the opportunity to talk today. And yeah, just to say we're really excited about continued engagement from everyone here and those in the audience in not just purchasing VERs, but just in sustainability in general. So yeah.
Thank you. And Joseph?
Thank you. I think we are all sharing the same thoughts. What I'll say is that we only have one planet that is called Earth. There's no planet B. So by supporting such initiatives like REDD, then it means that you are saving the planet for ourselves and for the coming generations.
Thank you, Joseph. It's never easy going last on a list of things on the planet, so thank you very much indeed. Well, we've run out of time. Many thanks indeed to our panel for taking the time to come here to Stockholm to share their experiences and insights. Thank you very much indeed. Thanks also to the team at our sponsors, Everland, for facilitating today, and to Innovation Forum's Anita Thompson for making this all happen. Do look out on the Innovation Forum website and podcast for some follow-up from today's discussions. I will try to cover all the questions we didn't get to online, and thank you so much for all those questions. We'll try to cover all those in the follow-up podcast that we're going to be doing. But for now, many thanks to everyone here in Stockholm and online, and goodbye.